Well, hello. We're back at another part of our series. This is chapter 3, The Fall of Man, or The Rise of Questions. So I know that we're going to peel back the layers of the Garden of Eden and the so called fall of man. Is it historical truth, or is it a divine parable, or could it be just an ultimate spiritual riddle? Who knows? We'll find out. So thank you for joining us. Once again, please click the like, subscribe, and the notification bell. And you can have any questions or concerns, prayer requests, please email us at atlife@yahoo.com. And we'll look forward to hearing from everyone. And please keep the families in prayer that's in Texas area with the flooding, because I know that was very, very devastating, and my heart breaks out for those families with kids and those who lost family members in the process with the flooding. So I know it should be raining again over there in Texas. So we're having some weird weather going on, which is not Texas at all. But we're here and we're going to turn it over to our team leaders and let them guide us through the lies and deceits.
I want to reiterate the fact that what's happening in Texas, it's horrific. I've been to that part, the hill country. It's beautiful, beautiful camping areas and everything. But to see those floods that hit in such a fast way is just mind boggling. So I feel like we really need to pray for those families. And we're going to do that right now. We're not going to just say, talk about it. We're going to do it. I'm going to ask God's strength for those that they can find their loved ones that they have no idea where they're at, and give them strength through this very horrific, terrible time. It's just a nightmare. Mighty God, I ask you to please reach down your hand of compassion and love to the families in Texas who have lost their loved ones, the children that are gone. It's the worst thing a parent could ever live through, is the loss of their child. God, give them the ability to search and find those that are still alive, and that this disaster doesn't destroy everything in everybody's life. I know there's no comfort in the loss of a loved one. I don't care what anybody says, you don't just get over it. Lord, I ask you, please hold back the waters. Let the children be found, and let them be found alive. God, we thank you for your mercy and kindness, and help the rescuers stay strong and valiant to go forward and help do everything that is necessary. I know the burden of responsibilities on Governor Abbott. I ask you, God, to give him strength and wisdom and direction as this state of emergency is declared in Texas. Thank you, Lord, for your kindness. Thank you for hearing us. Sweet, sweet, precious God that I serve. Losing a child is the worst thing any parent will ever live through. I had that said to me many times through my life, and in 2020, when I lost my youngest son, I now completely could relate to the devastating blow that happens when an accident takes place, or a murder, or a death that's completely non-expected. As parents, we look for us to outlive our children and that they will bury us. But when you're faced with the horrific task of burying your child, I know that all so well. And it's just the most devastating thing. And to this day, my heart will always break and miss my Chris. But I'm thankful I had the time I had with him. So my heart has a lot of compassion for the parents and the families that are going through this right now. I know, Julian, you were supposed to be going down toward that way, and your trip was delayed. And I have to ask, was there something involved in this that protected you? And we could say, well, it didn't hit San Antonio, but it's not going to affect that region above 58 miles above and to the northeast, I think it is where Kerrville is from San Antonio. And for you to all of a sudden have the issues that you had and then had to turn around. I said, Stacy, I think there were two things involved there. One, that Julian is supposed to be here for the series. I didn't know you'd started your vacation. The second was God was protecting you.
I was already leery with him going down. For some reason, I felt this leeriness, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe he'll be okay, you know. So well, I'll just stay up until he make it. And then I was kind of wondering until he called me, oh, he's not going, he's turning around. And I was like, okay, well, it wasn't meant to be. So that's how I took it.
And, you know, I've never stopped anybody from going on any trip. I've never said you can't go on a trip. But for some reason, when Stacy said that you were going to go, I thought, well, that's good. You'll get a chance to see your mother. And I know how important that is, and your sister from Carolina. And I just had this feeling inside of me, stay awake and stay praying. So I didn't shut my eyes. And I kept watching. I kept watching and praying that you would be safe, that whatever it was that I was feeling a hesitancy about was the same hesitancy, Julian, I felt when they were coming back through Dallas. And I just couldn't shake that. And the same hesitancy I felt when I contacted Mike before they hit the deer. You know,
and I didn't even tell him that, you know, maybe he should wait a couple of days. I was already leery because it was the 4th of July. So I was like, well, there's all the drunkards out. And then I was looking at the time he was leaving, and I was like, oh, he's leaving too late and everybody's going to be out. And, you know, there was all kinds of things running through my head. Not that was like PTSD. I guess part of it was since my accident and all the other accidents we didn't have. But, you know, I was still leery him going down at that time, but I didn't really express it to him. I knew he would keep me posted and whatever, but yeah, I knew we're on this part of the country, and I did not want to have to go through something happening and I could not get out of the country and take care of it. So
as I laid there and prayed, and I'd try to rest a little bit, and I'd look over at the phone to see whether Julian had texted or indicated that where he was on the road, because I like it when you guys put the little notification on the phone where I can track you through the map zone. It's like I know where everybody is at that time. And so when I finally had text you, I thought he should have got to San Antonio by now. There should have been there. I've kind of guesstimated because I know how long that trip takes. And whenever I text you and you came back and said you had to turn around because you had brake trouble, I thought, look what God did. God had your wife praying, had your pastor praying, had us troubled in our heart that you would be okay. And like I said, I've always had wisdom in your capabilities of your driving, etc. But I want to tell this story before I tell another, and this is important, is what happened on that day that we were coming back from that teachers convention from Austin. And just keep the 3 screens on there for just a couple more minutes, Stacy, because this involves you too. Stacy and Barry and I went to Austin for a teachers convention where we were getting information for our school and seeing if there was any new products online. We'd been gone a couple of days, and the convention was over early enough for us to make it back to Dallas. There wasn't going to be a problem with that. And Stacy was ready to go. She was refreshed enough, even though it was late afternoon. It's like about a 4-hour drive from where we live to Austin, where we were going to class at. And I said, no, we're not going to go today. We're going to go first thing in the morning. So let's just go get a bite to eat, go back to the hotel, and we'll leave first thing in the morning. The girl said, that's fine. You know, we'll just go to the mall and whatever. So we went. Well, the next day when we got up, we don't get up early and rise up and go out anywhere, because I don't like the traffic situation in any of the major cities. So it seems like in my mind, if I'm going to get on the road at 7:00, then I'm going to sit on the traffic in Austin or DFW for a good hour and a half. So why not just sleep until the traffic is possibly going to be, slowed down? Well, this day, Stacy was driving and I was sitting in the front seat, and we'd gone just a ways down the road. And it was a clear, beautiful day. It was gorgeous. It's like, this is a perfect time to go home. But then all of a sudden, the Lord spoke to me and said, black ice. And immediately I said, Stacy, black ice. And we were coming up under a bridge. It didn't look like there was any dew on the ground or any frost or anything. But before we got there, there was a semi and a car that was in front of us, and all of a sudden they hit the black ice and they went out of control. Well, you all know that immediately I go into his spirit and I put my hand out and began to speak the words and guided those vehicles off the road. And nobody was hurt. They were shook up. So Stacy saw we were coming up on it. She slowed down. So we saw an elderly couple that was by that semi. So we got over to see if they were doing okay. And so Stacy, Barry, and I were out, making sure they were all right. And all of a sudden it hit me again, black ice. And standing at the side of the road, I was praying with my hand extended and doing this. You guys can't see what I'm doing, but I'm pushing the car out of the way. And they would come to the side on the curb there and get their composure and go. And it was about the 9th car. Was that about right, Stacy? About the 9th car that was a van.
Yes, it was 8th or 9th. Yes.
And when I saw it, I got distracted by the previous car because they were really upset what they had just experienced, because it wasn't just a easy slide. I mean, it was, when you hit black ice, there's no control of the vehicle at all. And when I turned back around, there was a van that hit that black ice, and I saw something flying up into the air, and it came down, and I thought it was a piece of luggage. And it wasn't. It was a child. The child had been killed on impact. We rushed over to the family to try to help them, because obviously there was no emergency people at that point. And we prayed for the family. And of course, the little girl, I think she was a teenager, was what she was. I can't remember now.
When the van flipped, there was all kinds of bodies flying out. It was like clothes and bodies, because one kid, he was younger, and he got up and walked away from it, but it hurt.
Yes.
I think that's when the vehicle rolled on top of her when she hit the ground. So, because it had rolled down the hill. Yeah.
And so I remember at that point, after we got through helping them, that I said to Stacy, I took my eyes off. I looked away. The little girl is gone because I couldn't stay focused. And Stacy said to me, did you expect to stand there all day long until the ice melted? You can't take responsibility for you not seeing this. Now, we've seen the hand of God in such powerful ways. And this really hit me, but it wasn't the only time that we've seen God do that. Guy that went to our church, Joe, and I was on the main 360 highway coming up between Arlington and Grand Prairie. And the Lord spoke to me that there was a refrigerator that was going to come out of the back of another truck. And I said, Joe, be careful. That's going to come out. It looked completely strapped down. There was no way it would have come out of there. And once again, here it comes tumbling off, and I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I'm doing the same thing. No, as it's missing each car. The cars didn't have time to swerve. That thing bounced across 2 lanes of traffic and ended up in the ditch. And Joe said to me, did you see what just happened? I thought I was a little bit focused. You see, it goes back to even when that rocket went off and was headed for this building, and I didn't do anything because I thought, well, they're going to intercept it. There's no need for me to step in. And at that point, I remember thinking, well, what are you guys going to do? Where's your Iron Dome? Where's your interception? It wasn't coming, and it was going to, the building where we're at and the one next to us across the street, it was going to hit both of these buildings simultaneously. So immediately I stepped right into that place again and put my hand up toward that missile and spoke. And the thing exploded when I said, no, it just went poof. And then I moved my hand to the other one and said, no, and it went poof. There was no interception of man. That was the interception of God. Then I turned to the old city and I said, Lord, protect your city. Please protect your city. And as ended up, I turned around to come into the apartment, and Barry and Stacy and Joy said, "We were wondering what was taking you so long." Well, okay, I was expecting them to do their job, but God did it instead.
I was there when the refrigerator thing happened on the road.
Oh, you were with us on the road, and you remember seeing that.
Yeah, it was weird because this was a freeway, so cars are going high speed, they're not going go slow. So it was weird. I mean, how the refrigerator just stumbled on, but it was like it missed every car, and it was just bouncing from all the way until it ended up on the side of the road. But like I said, all the cars were going real fast, and we missed all of them.
It missed every one of them, and I kept looking in that rearview mirror. And see, I know the power of God. And I know that from my hands flows his spirit. I know that. But I don't abuse the power that God has given to me. That is something that I am very mindful and very respectful of. But God has done some things that people would never believe possible. And he never had to do one of it. He never had to do it one time. But he's done it over and over and over again. I know that we've seen some things that are inexplainable. They're just phenomenal. But you see, I put my life in his hands. And before I go to tell the story and bring us into that chapter, I do want to say something at this point. The question came up, and I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but it was a very vital, critical question. I am so thrilled it was asked. It was about your prayer life and your walk with God. When you came to the Lord, wherever you are, whatever part of the country, region, or world that you're in, you began to establish a relationship with the Lord by what you knew. And your sincerity, through that sincerity, God has led some of you through a unique, powerful path. And one that I would have to say is definitely ordained by God. I believed in that book. As I've said before, I could quote many sections of it. When I would put my cassette tape on or disc on, I could quote the Bible with it as it was saying it. It was that much ingrained in my head. I knew it. I wrote it. I researched every word. I believed in that book wholeheartedly, never questioning if there was any fallacy or any contradictions or anything of that nature. I trusted God sincerely, but God knew where he was taking me. As time progressed and I saw more and more of what God expects of me, the first major step was when I got rid of all paganism. All paganism. Anything that was associated with other gods in the holidays, in paraphernalia inside and around my house, anything that I thought, even the clothing, if there was a symbol on it that might represent another deity, I got rid of it. And as I got rid of it, I realized more and more that there was more to walking with God. I already had a powerful anointing of the Lord, but not to this magnitude. So, number one, in order to establish that relationship, now that you've started a foundation of prayer and communication, begin to ask him what pleases him and look around your house, everywhere that you can think of, in participation. Don't participate in these holidays. I don't care if it makes your family mad or whatever. You're more prone to please God than you are to ever make your family happy. So I got rid of the paganism and believe in only one God. Now, this was happening, and I appreciate Mike saying this a few days ago when he said, you quit using in Jesus' name and quit referring to Jesus years before you ever made the declaration. You just had not openly made the declaration on the internet until 2021, I think it was. And that is true. And again, it was because of mythology. Jesus was built upon a myth, and that myth was not anywhere what you think it is. There were many dying and resurrecting gods throughout mythology. Jesus was just one of them. So the Jews and the Islamic and Christian world picked up the idea of Jesus Christ. The problem with that was it took every bit of focus off of him and put it on that. Every bit of focus. So mercy, kindness, goodness, all the attributes that we attribute to Jesus Christ were not his. They were all the time. Those were the attributes of Adonai, Isolokurai, of my God, the Almighty God of heaven. Those are his attributes. They were not those of Jesus Christ. And the world started following that. Oh, he's a prophet. Oh, he's a teacher, or he's God. No, there is one God and one God alone. And finally, in 2021, I made the open declaration on the live stream, just like I did yesterday when I denounced the Old Testament. I do not believe in anything that's in that book. Okay? And as we're taking you chapter by chapter through some of this, I'm going to import some of the knowledge that I have on walking with God to direct you and help you understand. Don't ever think God doesn't hear you. Go ahead.
Everyone at some point comes to God, their version, and just like I used to say many of times, we come and we meet people, and those people that enter our lives come at some point in time to bring us to another step towards God. And then they either stay or they go, and we get disheartened because, they left or they broke our hearts and everything. But you have to take it as, I took it as this, they came in my life and they left, but that was a reason, because I wanted to know God deeper. And being on this journey, you realize that I don't think we've really, every time we wanted to take that step deeper in God, people came and go, or things change, and we kept going, taking another step, and we kept taking another step. It's kind of like going to the ocean and you don't want to you're running from the water trying to get your feet wet, but you don't really like the sand. That's me. I don't like really sand on my feet. I'm very particular. But you want the water to, kind of cool off or whatever, wash the sand off your feet. And we're taking those steps to get deeper into the ocean, to get deeper into God. And it's been a journey. We've made twists and turns, and when we did the Sabbath, when we didn't do pork, and we at one point we really didn't eat pork, but at one point in time we did eat pork, and then we stopped eating pork because we took another step. We went to the Sabbath, we took another step, and we got into the holidays, we took another step, and each time God has came in and enveloped us with his presence. And people think, oh, I'm sad about it, and it's not for the faint of heart. It really isn't, because it really takes a lot of backbone. It takes a lot of backbone for people to take that step to go deeper in God. And most people, they waver because, oh, I got family. You can't live for your family, because your relationship with God, I don't want it to be with my family. I want it to be with me and him. That's like sharing. If I was to share my husband, I don't want to share my husband with everybody else. I want to share my husband with just me and him. So
Right. Aren't you
that
glad
relationship, and that relationship with God, that's between you and him. And yes, we all come, and obviously that prayer life or whatever God gave you at that time brought you to this point. And unfortunately, we had to take years, of many journeys to get to where we're at. And there's no regret. I don't believe in regret. So it just makes me, oh, okay, well, what's next? You're kind of like on a roller coaster ride, and you got that adrenaline high. What's next on the journey? What's next? And that's how I see this whole thing. We may stumble and fall, and we can never get any holidays right anyhow. So it's like, oh, we're going to do this. No, we're not. No. So throughout the whole process, God has really directed us. It's like, oh, we're going to do this. No, we're not. We're going to do something else. So, and it's been, to me, God has directed us, just like different ones that we've met recently. I don't want to put anybody's name out there or whatever. And God has directed them. They've watched in the
Mhm.
background, just like me and my husband did. I watched you for 2 years before I was like, I was came from a different church that was very had a lot of hypocrisy and everything else, and I won't even get into that. But in order to build trust, you know, people have to trust something. Are you going to take me to where I need to go? Sometimes people need a little push, not just rely on the leadership, but a little push to get to where I want to go. But just give me some direction, and I'll take it from there. And then we'll see what happens. It took me 2 years, and I don't have any regret. People say, "Oh, why are you doing that?" Oh, I don't have any regret. I'm not at that baby stage. I don't like eating baby food. I like eating meat. So.
And it seemed that every step we took, every major step we took, we ended up losing people. Congregation, we ended up losing people. So, but to us, I mean, it really doesn't matter per se, because, like I said, we're following after Him. And if anybody wants to leave along the way, that's on them. That's not on us. We're just going to keep going as He directs, But it seemed like every major step we took, what people felt on the wayside.
I think they were too busy trying to straddle the fence, put one, go this way and that way and blend the two together. And you can't, you either have to be all in or nothing. So, and that's what, people don't realize. You can't be, oh, let me cater to this, my family members, and let me cater, but I want to cater to God, and I want to, you can't do it. It's either all in or nothing. And that's with any relationship, but mainly the main focus is the relationship with God, you know, and people can't seem to get that thought process. It's like, okay, I'm going all in, or it's nothing. Just like when I left um, a church that I previously was attending 30 years plus back, and that I grew up in, I, you know, I had lots of questions at a young age, and they always, they wanted to, they were Christian, so they wanted to pray you through because you were demon possessed, because I was bold enough to say, well, that didn't even make any sense. Oh, your child's demon possessed. Get her at the altar. I've been through all of that, and I'm thinking, okay, so it's going to be another hour-long thing of y'all doing this Jesus thing in my ear, and I'm have to sit here and tolerate it because I'm demon possessed because I asked you a question why it didn't make sense. And I questioned it back then. And when I left, I had told my mom, me, my sister, and my mom, we left. And I said, look, the next journey, it's either God or nothing. It's not mankind following after man, or different religions, or different pastors, or whatever. No, it's either God or nothing. And I was like, I'm never going to a church ever. And, I was dead set. Well, I was dead set on, I wouldn't even take my mom. I was like, oh, I'll sit out in the car, wait for you or whatever, but I'm not going into the door. And then I got set up. But, people don't realize when you want to go deeper on a journey with God, it's an all in or nothing. And, some people can't handle that. Some people have to take just a little bit.
And I think the amazing part is, for all of you who don't know this, it was Stacy's mother who came to visit my church while I was in El Paso when my brother was killed by a drunk driver. And I saw her card on my desk when I got back to my office. And I don't normally just go visit people. Sometimes I'll send a couple of staff members because I'm really not certain who they are or what it's about. So this time a staff member and I went to go visit Jeanette Johnson. And Stacy opened the door. Her and Barry were at the house, and boy, was it quite a interesting open the door, and it wasn't quite welcome. But I heard her say, some white woman's at the door. What was it, Stacy? Some white woman was at the door?
Some white Jehovah's Witness was at the door, and I said, I'm not talking to him. And I knew my mom, my mom was a very friendly, talkative, everybody in the town knew her, everybody. And I mean, everybody in both towns, they all knew her. And I'm thinking, I am not about to sit here for the 5-hour conversation talking about some churchies and all of this other stuff. Oh, the Lord, this. No, it was not me, because I was done with religion. I wasn't done with God. I was done with religion. And I just thought, oh gosh, I can't do it. So I did. I probably was a little bit rude. I wouldn't say all that rude, but I was just a little bit. I just didn't. It's not rude. I just didn't want to hear it. So that's what it was.
But her mom came to church the next service that we had, and her mom was the most amazing woman you'd ever met in your life. Sister J, Sister Johnson, as we called her, was just a person you had to love. She was just so much in love with God. And Stacy would not come inside the church doors. And I didn't know she was sitting out in the parking lot. I was always glad to see that Sister Johnson came. And Sister Johnson never missed a service after. I don't know how many days or weeks Stacy sat out in the car before she finally came in. And I think it was because I said something to her mom about the fact that she was going to take a test or working on algebra. And I said, well, I used to be an A student in algebra. I could help her. I could possibly tutor. Okay.
And I was about to graduate and I needed to pass this calculus situation. Oh, I'm going to help you and la, la, la. And I'm thinking, okay. And I was still kind of leery because I was thinking, oh, okay, this is going to be a setup. And I really didn't want to talk about whoever's God and whatever church meeting and all of that. I really didn't want to hear that. And so I was like, okay, well, she said she'll help me. I just need to pass the test so I can graduate. It was a calculus and trig all at the same time. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let's try it. And here we are.
Then when
we didn't get to that point.
Then when she opened up the book, when I saw her book, I thought, I don't know calculus or trigonometry. I knew algebra. I was good at algebra. And from that point, it seemed like that point on, and it's been over 31 years, or soon to be 31 years now, since our first meeting with her family. And Jeanette was on my senior staff for a very, very long time. And now her daughters and granddaughters and son-in-law are all on my senior staff. So her life and dedication to God impacted her two daughters. Her two son-in-laws are both serving the Lord. They're both in our group. And her grandchildren, with the exception of one grandson, and he's a little bit on his uncertain boundary. But he'll make it. But the point is, because of one woman's love for God and dedication, you look around and those same people that are from her are helping me lead this group. What a family. And we all became as family. Sometimes when you have to walk away from your family because of a difference in belief and their activities are absolutely going against God, you lose family members along the way. And it's painful. And yet you come to a decision of, do I conform, compromise, or stand my ground? In my case, I stood my ground. And everybody that's with me today stood their ground. So all of the people that are now with me became my family. The family I lost, God gave me back an unbelievable amount of love and support that this group has. So and Kathy found this out recently, I always tell my family, good night, family. I love you. You're amazing. And we all respond, kind of like years ago, they had a show called The Waltons, and I said, good night, John Boy. Good night, Mary Helen. Goodbye. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Grandpa. Well, that's kind of like what we do, is just acknowledge we're going to bed because we're obviously in different time zones. And we want you to know we love you and appreciate all that you've done. All of us made a choice to serve the Lord or compromise. I never ask anybody to make that choice. And on many occasions, even being here in Jerusalem, I would say, if you all want to go home, I'll stand the ground. You go on home and be with your loved ones. But Joy, Barry, who are stuck in Cyprus for the last 10 months, Stacy and I, who are in Jerusalem, they said, we're not going anywhere. We are in this ride or die all the way. We know where God's presence is. We're going to stand. Debo and Julian have been the greatest, absolute, amazing husbands that love and support their wives in in unbelievable magnitude. And they're welcome to come this way. If the flights were any cheaper, I'm sure they probably might. But Julian has been here a couple of times. The point I'm getting at is this: you make a choice to serve the Lord or walk away. I'm thankful that 31 years ago, Stacy walked into my life and she became the daughter I never had. And I refer to her as my daughter. And she's funny because when we're out and about and I'll say, my daughter's around here somewhere. And Stacy walks up and they kind of give her strangely because she goes, I'm the black sheep of the family. And I think we should stop saying that. She said, I'm the darker side of the family. I get tickled at her, and they see the love that this group has between each other. And that's how it should be. A pure love of God. So we've seen the miraculous. I want to go back a little bit to a couple of things that were touched on. Laying that foundation in prayer. Your communication with God is between you and God. I don't govern anybody's prayer time or anybody's way to pray. You have your personality and the way you do things, just like I have mine. Whatever foundation you have found that you communicate with God is great. I do the same thing. Just keep building on it and keeping that attitude of prayer. So if you're listening or watching or whatever, and you're wondering, is she govern anything? The answer is no. I'm not a dictator. I'm a teacher, an instructor, and it's been very hard for us because I have been a pastor since 89. And many people still refer to me as a pastor. Although pastor is a kind of a Christian term, we don't know what term to put it in there. We tried rabbi because I'm a teacher, and that didn't sit. And they don't like it when somebody calls me Cheryl, so they just call me her or she. Nobody calls my name, but that's okay. I haven't got a problem with it. But some who are watching and listening and a part of this group do look at me as their pastor, and I am. And I do treat them as if we were all in the same building, not scattered across different countries. Because to me, your care and well-being is of great interest to me. If you have a hospital trip or you've got something, I am quick to hear about it and quick to immediately pray about it, and if possible, reach out to you. Maybe I won't be able to do that in the future, but that's still the way I do things. To me, each individual is critically important because God called you out of a world of darkness to guide you to Him. He just happened to be the leader. That's just something like I made the statement years ago. I'm God's glorified secretary, and half the time I get the messages wrong. I want to bring up this thing too, that when we talk about clean and unclean foods, and we haven't brought that up yet, but I am going to bring it up just briefly. I'm not going to expound on it. The reason we don't eat pork has not to do with the clean and unclean biblical sense. It has to do with the fact that pork is an animal that the blood is never gone, even if you cook it exceptionally well. It carries many diseases, and it also can be known as a causing of cancer. So we don't eat pork because of the scientific healthy issues. Just like I take, don't drink the sodas, don't drink the sugary drinks because it's only going to cause obesity and health problems, etc. But I'm not going to run around with a thermostat and ask you, what did you have on your plate today? You're an adult. You make your decisions. If you have health issues, you might look at what you're eating. I wish I could be like Kathy and say, I haven't ever even taken an aspirin. Unfortunately, I've had 9 surgeries, and it required medication. All of them were emergency surgeries, things that just, my body's kind of crazy. Not only do I have a rare eye color, I have a rare blood, and I have a really strange body. So these were surgeries that could not be avoided. And unfortunately, I did have to take medication. The thing is, I took as little bit as possible, not stayed on it for long periods. And if they said take 2, I took 1. They said take 1, I took a half of 1. I just reduced it down. I'm not preaching against medication. I'm not preaching against our dietary restrictions. But I am saying for your own health, it's important that you look up those types of foods. I snack on dried fruit and nuts. That's what I snack on. Not candies and candy bars. And if I get a little piece of chocolate, it's very small, very tiny piece. I won't eat a large candy bar. I'll eat just a tiny section. It will go for days. It may take me a whole month to 2 months to eat a candy bar. But I just take a little bit just to enjoy that sweet taste. I prefer not to drink any caffeine at all because it is dangerous to your health. All caffeines cause a problem, and you can look that up. Type in caffeine. You know, the thing that I found amazing was for all these years, I've had my own library and many other libraries around me. But I love the fact that I now have a computer at my fingertips. And with AI, I can ask the question, like in Gemini, is there anything wrong with caffeine or effects of caffeine? And it just gives me the whole list. You can make very wise decisions on your food choices and on your activities by doing a little research. It's not my place to do the research for you, but you know your body, you know what you can handle. My son, unfortunately, does drink Cokes, and recently he's had to quit them because he realized it was causing him anxiety. Now, how long has he quit them? I don't know, but maybe it's a while, maybe it's not. But that was his drink of choice. I like decaffeinated tea. I don't want caffeine in my tea. So when you are saying, is it clean or unclean, really step back and look at the research, scientific medical research associated with that particular food. Now, I said I wasn't going to bring this, but I'm going to do it this way anyway. Here in Jerusalem, in Israel, they have kosher milk, kosher bread, kosher this, kosher that. But what you don't realize is in order to make something kosher, you just pay the rabbi. So you have the same herd of cattle going into to be milked, and the rabbi sits there and blesses a portion of them, and then you pay him, you get the stamp of approval, and it's kosher. There's no difference in the cows and what's happening. And it's even at the very same farm. This has become a big gimmick, and there's many things that are said not kosher, not for consumption. They have kosher wine, kosher beer. Now, you can't take ethanol out of any of that. So how can we even say those are good for us? So that question has come up. It's not one that I intended to address, but it is something that I'm pointing out at this point. We need to understand you are on your journey to walk with God. You have been on a journey to walk with God. Don't ever, ever, ever discredit that journey. If I hadn't started back here, I wouldn't be where I am today. So never doubt your communication with God. It's critical that you realize He does hear you, and He does know your heart, and He does see where you're at. He knows the hardships that we go through. You know, I was hit this week with some unbelievable financial expenses that I did not anticipate. And I said, I have one of two choices. I can stay here and I can finish what God brought me to, have to go out on the street or find a place to put our stuff and exist. But I'm going to do what God has called me to do. And regardless of what the situation is, we all hit financial struggles. We get hit with things that we're not prepared for. That's life. That's not God's hand against us. That's life. What I find appalling is when you shake your fist at God and fail to believe Him. Okay, so I got hit with this massive amount of money that wiped out my savings. Am I going to quit? No. Am I going to back down? No. I came here to bring the people to the Lord, and that's what I will do. No turnaround, no back down, just trusting Him. I've seen it where I didn't have pennies to buy my children a loaf of bread or even a box of crackers. And I've seen God do such miraculous things when people at the church would never even open their hand. Now, I know we have not even covered the topic that I wanted to talk about, but we're covering what matters to you all. I know we said we're going to break this in 30-minute segments, and I'm looking in this clock and it says 46 minutes. I think it's been very worthy time spent on understanding. Never discredit the journey that God has taken you down. That's your testimony. That's where he found you at. That's where you knew he was real. Never, ever discredit that. Don't measure your walk with God against mine. They're not the same. We're two different people. We may be on the same mission to serve him with all of our heart, but he'll give me direction as the leader of this group that he may not speak to you. But then again, he may show you, and you may be waiting to see how I'm going to respond. Because deception was so strong in the Christian world, I have been slow to make a declaration of any type until I've heard strictly from God and have done the necessary research to set the foundation. I do not want to mislead you, and I want to follow God every step of the way. Before we started the service, I said, let's pray. And some of you know my mannerism very well. And Mike, I know you're on here, Stacy and Julian. When I went to pray, what did you notice at the end of that prayer?
You always have a reverence for God. That, to me, that's the thing that I think is lacking today, because people don't have that reverence for God that they should have. Even when addressing Him, it's there's like, to me, I've never talked to Him like talking. I would speak to Him like talking to anybody, but not in the same manner of, the reverence is different. The reverence is different because, I'm addressing Him, I'm talking to Him, and I'm not just talking to anybody. And then I want to bring back something that, because I didn't think about it until later on, way later on, especially after we started talking about the Jesus thing, that I can remember that whenever I actually surrendered my life to God, I can remember biblically how it happened. And when that happened, I did not say, Jesus, forgive me, or anything like that. I asked God to forgive me. God, forgive me of it. Forgive me everything I've done. That I surrendered my life to you and everything. I did it to Him. So later on, when we started talking about the Jesus thing, I was like, well, that's kind of strange, because I didn't. And then, I remember back when I surrendered to God, and I was like, I didn't do it in Jesus' name. And I felt the change. I felt His presence. So to me, it was more confirmation that, like even back then, I was still just acknowledging Him, not any other deity, just Him. So to me, the reference there. Also, the thing that I want to bring up is that one of the mistakes that people have done a lot, especially in the Christian community, is that they put their pastors or church leaders in a pedestal. And that's something that I always had, to me, I always found that, like, why are you doing that? Why would you put a man, a person, in a pedestal like that? You can't. And that's one thing that I always, I've said it before, I'll say it again, that one thing I've always respected from you is that I have told you that way back then. I told you that I have a reverence for you. I respect you a lot. I know your spiritual walk with God and everything, but I will never ever put you on a pedestal, because that's where God belongs, not a man, not a person. So to me, like I said, that's something that the Christian community has always done. You can't do that. You cannot, even if you respect to, or they're telling you to do it, don't do that. That just belongs to God. It's just reserved for God and nobody else. So, like I said, that's one of the things I respect out of you a lot, because even when we started talking back then, I told you some of these things that I said, this is how I feel about things, and you said, absolutely. never ever put me there because I don't belong there. Only God belongs there from the very beginning. So that's one of the things that for you as a church leader at that time, for you as a spiritual leader, for you to tell me that, no, don't ever put me there, that the only God belongs there, I knew I knew I was home, because anybody else would have told you, they would have told me different. No, you should have a reverence for me because I'm the pastor, because I'm this and that. No, yes, reverence to a certain degree, yes, but to put you on a pedestal, no, that's only for God.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. And even recently, when I knew that I'm supposed to lead this world into the presence of God, what's the thing I did? I called you and Stacy aside and I said to you, please promise me that you will never allow them to clap their hands in applause when I enter. They can clap their hands unto God for gratitude for his mercy, but not unto me. Never allow them to erect a statue or any symbol of me anywhere. I never want to be put in a place of adoration. The only one that we should all love and adore is the Creator, the Almighty God of this universe. I've felt that for many years, and I detest even when people stand as a way to show reverence. I'm just a person who loves God a whole lot, and I don't expect to be treated with some kind of pedestal or carried on some kind of platform. I just want to do the best I can to lead the people as he's asked me. The one thing that Mike probably saw in Stacy, if they were watching, is after I prayed, I put my head like this and I was waiting for his instructions. And when he spoke to me and I said, okay, he had just told me to go forward and teach and he would be in the class. Well, has he? He's been in this class. Although my agenda was to teach chapter 3 and 4, he can take over at any time, and he runs it the way he wants to. And this is the way I've always observed things, in respect, for I know I am not where I would be if not been for his mercy and love. We can never, ever take pride in things that we've seen miraculously. I prayed, God did the intervention. I stretched forth my hand and God was the arrow of electricity. I don't have it in me as a human being. I'm just a woman made of flesh and blood and old and getting older every day. But I'm not a God and I'm not a deity. And I love what the Lord spoke to me some time ago. He said, you tell them when you come before Israel that you are not here to fulfill their agenda or their prophecy. You are here to teach them how to follow me. I loved that. That was so powerful for him to speak those words to me. I am not of any great historical magnitude. I'm just a woman. I'm thankful for what he's done, and I'm continuing to look forward to every part of it. Okay, forgive me if we didn't get chapter 3 and 4 taught today, or 5, but I really feel like this is very valid, that we need to know we're on the right track, and that God does inhabit the praises of his people. When you mess up, just ask for forgiveness. It doesn't have to be a complicated ringing out at the altar. I was going to tell this story, and I am going to in closing. I didn't believe in women pastors when I started this church. I was pretty active in the church that I had attended in Arlington. And I was very much accepted because I had some computer skills, and I would work in the office for free along with a very good lady that I knew. And we became real close friends. She was going through a divorce and my husband was in prison. And so we were helping each other. She had several children. I had 2. We'd help each other with food and whatever we needed to do to kind of keep the unit going. So we became interactive on a daily basis. She worked at the office, and so I would work at the office and volunteer. I was told how great and wonderful I was, bragged about from the pulpit. And my first husband and I, he was deceased after this time frame, we'd go to the church and quietly clean it up and fix up the yard. And nobody ever knew who was doing that, but it was me and my husband and our 2 boys. So I wrote, produced, directed the Christmas program for that year. I was also a songwriter, so I wrote a song that we would sing. And here comes a performance for Christmas, and it is unbelievable. Before it got to this point, a few months prior, our pastor came in and said he didn't want any more shouting and dancing before the Lord because it confuses the visitors. And he did this on a Wednesday night. My husband was at home. He hadn't been sent to prison. Didn't go to prison until after I started the church. He was in and out of jail, I guess it was. So when I came home and told my husband that, he said, "What's he doing? No man has a right to control worship. What's he doing? You can't go back there." And I said, I have to give him the benefit of the doubt. So I went into prayer and I got the Bible and I started looking for scriptures about worshiping God and how they worshiped in the scriptures. And I went prepared to turn my keys in and resign. And so I told him, the reason I run and worship and shout unto the Lord is because, you see, one time I was told I would never walk again because they messed up on a medical procedure, that I'd spend the rest of my life laying flat in a facility. So when I worship God, I'm worshiping him because I can, when I was told I can't. I gave him the scriptures along with my very close friend at the time. And he said, well, that's really nice, but we're not going to do that here. And I said, then I'm left with no choice but to give you my keys and resign. I thank you for including me in the activities, and have been a great part of my life, but I can't go along with you. And he said, well, if that's what you feel. I said, that's what I must do. So I walked out the door, and he continued to talk with my friend at the time. And he said, tell her to come back. I'm going to make an announcement. And I thought, well, here it comes. So I said, Robbie, I've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I've got to go back this one service. He said, well, I'm going with you because they're not going to attack you. And I said, I know how to get up and walk out the door. So he went with me, my husband did. And he starts in about, the worship and, the statement he made. And he goes, well, David danced before the Lord naked. Do you think I'm going to allow y'all to strip down and run around naked here in this sanctuary? You're wrong. But I will allow worship when I tell you you can. Well, that to me was too much of a compromise because, well, no, just go ahead. And everybody in the church knew it was me he was pointing at because I was the only one who came forward to say, we need to worship God with liberty. That however we feel to worship God, we need to be allowed to do so. So it was just a few months later, whenever this thing about Christmas came along. And as I was writing, producing, directing, and setting all this up, and even doing the backgrounds and stuff, the Lord spoke to me and said, go out on the streets of Arlington, and within 1 year, I will raise a church up that will worship me. I said to the Lord, I'm a woman. I have no place in leadership. I cannot do this. There's no scriptural foundation for me to be able to take that stand. And I kind of pushed it back another day or 2, 3. And then, lo and behold, if God didn't use my husband, Robbie, who was a backslidden young preacher, and said, honey, that's not what the scripture says. And he began to tell me what the scripture says. And we had a Bible study. And I said, but I still can't go by the pastor. I can't do that, Robbie. It's against everything that I've been taught. It's been against every fiber of my being. I'm not eloquent in speaking. I can't do this. He said, I suggest you do whatever God leads you to do. That's what you need to do. So I knew that the end of the year was coming, and I made my mind up that on the last day of December, I would officially leave that church. And I would just follow God, whatever he said to do, I would do it. I had no idea what was going to happen. But within a short time, God began to open the door and God began to move. Within that first year, we had 65 members in that church, all from every kind of background: drugs, street, alcohol, never served God at all, Christians that have fallen out with the Lord. And he said to me, the Lord said, I told you I'd raise up a church that would worship me. Well, in that time, I was still now facing the backlash. That preacher, I started by myself and my 2 boys. And there was a young couple of girls that had started a church about 4 months prior. And they were coming over to our house and would play Pictionary, and we would study the Bible together. And he knew that they were coming over to see me because he had people watching my house. Like that. So one Wednesday night, he brought both of the girls up before the church. And he said, we want to pray for you because you're associating with somebody who's demon possessed. And we don't want you to go off into darkness and be misled. Well, the girls knew that we'd been studying the Bible, that we had been playing Pictionary and having occasional dinners together. And this really upset them because we were the only ones, Robbie and I, that took them in from the church to befriend them because they knew nothing about Pentecostal. And the next thing I know, that same night they did this to them. They came knocking on my door in frantic behavior. And I said, what's wrong? What's wrong? And they said, no, I will never go back to that church. Never will I ever go back there. I said, what happened? He said, they brought us up before the congregation and said we were associating with somebody who was demon possessed. We know how much you love God. We see what you do. There is no way we're going back to feel in a place where there's nothing but lies and deception and manipulation. So either accept us in as a part of you, or we'll never go back to church again. I said, welcome aboard. What could I do? They were both with me for some time. The thing I'm saying, if you get pushed out the door, that's probably the best thing that ever happened. Because if that person who's in charge of that assembly is threatened by your spiritual existence, you don't want to be there anyway, because you can never rise above your leader spiritually. So that means you're more spiritual than that leader. And so he's going to be, or he or she will be intimidated and try to suppress you. You need to go where you've got the full reign of growing in God, exactly how God wants to direct you. To me, that's my advice. So that was the story I was going to tell before I started teaching. Now that you've been patient and endured an hour and 4 minutes, we're not going to go ahead and teach the next part of that on the Genesis, but we will pick it up tomorrow. That is contingent on what I do tomorrow during the day. If I have strength, because our days are late, it's now almost 8 o'clock at night here. And as you know, we kind of go through every direction and what we do here. We're way ahead of you, or sometimes I'm up with you, working with you. The point is, I will continue to teach you and instruct you in the ways of God. And if you have a question, you're not sure about my position and where I stand, I'm open to any questions. And I will try my very best to answer them. If I don't know the answer for lapse of memory, believe me, I'll say, let me get back to you on that. But I will get you an answer. God has directed me to do this, and this is what I'm doing. We need to know what's next when we put that book away. We're learning to walk with God, hearing from Him, following Him. You need that type of relationship. I may not always be where you are. One day my life will come to an end. But I want you to have a strong, established relationship with God, that no matter what happens and what comes or goes, you know how to hear His voice and you know how to follow Him. To me, that's what this is all about. Well, we love you all, and we're going to see God move in this world, everywhere. Watch what I say. Thank you for watching. And I liked it when somebody got upset yesterday and got really angry. Jeremy said, Mom, at least look at this. You got people mad enough to give you a negative response, they'll be talking about you for a while now. I said, I don't look at negativity as bad. I think, well, good, that's free press. Just go ahead and tell everybody how much you hate me and what off the rocker I am. That doesn't bother me a bit. Most of those that happens to, they kind of met with some very unfortunate circumstances. Again, thank you. Stacy, sign off, and then we'll have our little chat after you sign off. You can go ahead and kill your cameras.